Hello everybody, my name is Safi and welcome to Overcoming the Diet Mindset podcast. I am 7 years post-op and a training psychotherapist. On this podcast, my aim is to vanish crappy, fad dieting and unhelpful thinking, to reclaim our mindset with a little rewiring so we can stop yo-yo dieting and get off the roller coaster for once and for all. On this episode, I'll be reviewing a Tedx talk about emotional eating. The speaker is Tricia Nelson. My apologies if I've mispronounced your name. Neurodiverse individual here, so my apologies in advance in case one day you listen to this and you would want to be a guest. She's also got a book called Healing Your Hunger. There's a lot of she's been doing this work for over 30 years, so there's a lot of resources out there. There's videos of her on YouTube. There's also a lot of she appears on a lot of podcasts. So if you put her name in, and I will put it at the bottom, the correct spelling. So when you put her name in, she's got a lot of information out there. And why I decided to do this is because as I was listening to her story, we had a lot in common. She explains that she was overweight, a yo-yo dieter. I think she says that she's had food addiction or overcome food addiction, but don't quote me on that one. She talks about being 50 pounds overweight by the time she was 20, and then continuing on that journey of down 10, up 20, down 30, up another 10, which I very much, I understand because that's always been my journey. I've lost 2 stones, then put on 4 stones, so up and down over the decades. So I definitely understand what she means about the fact that it gets to this vicious cycle where you're up and down. And another story that she tells, which is almost I could be telling that story, is laying there in her bed and grabbing her stomach and thinking about cutting her stomach off. And I have many times laid in my bedroom, at my parents', and I have fantasized about grabbing all the fat in my stomach, and which now I know is the cortisol pouch. It's that bottom stomach that some people get, and it's also referred to, I think, as an apron sometime. But I've always had that since I can remember, really. And I have fantasized about cutting it off and what it would feel like to have a flat stomach if all that was cut off. And then she goes on to also wishing to have a disease that made her skinny, or to be made, if she joined the army, where she would have no choice but to work out and then lose loads of weight. So I very much had all those fantasies, extreme fantasies, in my teens and I guess adulthood too, to be honest. Tricia, I'm going to stop pronouncing her name. So let's call her Miss Nelson. States that she cites a study completed in the UK. And this study was followed over 20 plus thousand adults doing the most popular diet. So each one of them was doing one of the popular diets, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, whatever it be, keto. And those dieters all gained back the weight within 1 year. But then she goes on to say that actually, if you look on Amazon right now, there'd be over 50,000 diet books right now if you looked at Amazon. So I think something is, so we know it doesn't work, but then why are we trying to still fool people? Why is dieting still a solution? We're almost being brainwashed to believe in there is a solution, and you just keep on looking. But we know it's got a lot to do with money. It's got a lot to do with how much the diet industry makes of people who are desperate to lose weight. So she goes on to explain that she's had I think her background's in addiction, specialized in addiction. She talks about food addiction also, and and that's it. She's got a lot of research, and she's very insightful. And then she goes on to explain that finally, I think it was really, it was a story that I can resonate with on some level. That one day she was there, I think it was cookies, possibly ice cream, but I'm thinking it was cookies because she retrieved it from the bin, from the trash, if you're American. I think cookies possibly. Let's say cookies. So she threw them away and was like, "That's it, I'm done. No more. I'm gonna change." And I'm sure in her head it was gonna be smoothie in the morning, salad for lunch, and chicken and vegetables for dinner. Or is that just my story? Anyway, so she gets out the cookie. I think in a moment of desperation, she goes back into the bin, gets the cookies out, and then demolishes them. And I think that's the moment she realized something has to change. And I can't remember ever going to the bin, but I could definitely remember throwing stuff away and then in the middle of the night going to, at the shops to go and get my supply of whatever junk food was my whatever I was craving at that time after trying to restrict all day. So she goes on to explain that she finally broke the cycle, and she discovered a healthy way to lose the weight and manage and keep off the weight, and that's what she does now. And she supports people with that, and I think she runs. I'm sure she runs a program, and you can find loads about her on YouTube. I found she's got a Facebook page as well, and she's also got the book. I think I've just mentioned, Healing Your Hunger book. I've managed to find a lot of episodes. I think she has a podcast actually, possibly by the same name, but she has appeared in loads of other people's podcasts, and that's how I learned about her in the first instance. So she outlined three key principles on that TED talk of how to. I think she's got about 7, but obviously TED talks it's about 15 minutes, so she had to condense that. So the acronym for her, I guess this is a framework, is called PEP. So it's P for painkiller, E for escape, and P for punishment. And so that's so food as a so we use food as a painkiller, food to escape, and food to punish. And the driver of emotions are pain, fear, and guilt. Which definitely that makes sense. So we eat because we want to get away from pain, and we use it as medicine. And I definitely have, and it's definitely, especially carbohydrates. And she does say her favorite type of food is carbohydrate, sugar, and so it's sugar, fat, and what's the other one? Anyway, all the yummy stuff, everything that a donut is made of. So we need that, and usually that gives us, and we know that releases the hormones, that affects the way we feel. It makes us feel happier. We get that dopamine fix, so we're killing the pain with it. It's very short term, but yeah. E for escape, so escaping our feelings, right? So I think she goes on to say that a lot of people go on a diet with the best intentions in the world, and they're very excited, and I know that feeling. It's amazing at the beginning. You start to lose weight, your clothes are getting loose, you're rocking it 4 days, 5 days, a week, 2 weeks. You're doing really, really well, and you think, this is it, I have conquered it. But then obviously you don't have the tools, and something comes up, something hard, a strong feeling. You haven't slept enough. You're stressed out at work. You're you're worried about your bills. All those life, all those things that happen in life, all those stresses come up, and then what do? And then we eat, and then we escape them, right? We escape anything scary. We use it to not feel those feelings. And that's what she says, that a lot of people will eventually fall off the diet because they have no other tools to use apart from using food to escape those feelings. But learning to feel those feelings and manage those feelings is the answer. So escape is driven by, as an emotion, is fear. And then the third one is punishment. So a lot of the time, you eat to punish yourself. You think, what a loser! I can't seem to. Why can't I do it? Why can't I succeed? And then you go on a binge because of it's, what at some point you're gonna want to make yourself feel better, because our body doesn't like us to be in too much pain. So out of guilt and punishment, you end up eating. And I've definitely been in that cycle of effort mode. Let's just eat. I am, I'm going to be like this forever. I'm such a loser. What's the point? I might as well, it doesn't matter if I, all the horribleness and all the things that we don't want to, we want to move away from. So I thought that's a really good framework, and it explains a lot, and I definitely agree with that. She goes on, this theory, I think, and framework, she goes into depth in the book, and I'm guessing there's a lot more really helpful insights from her 30 years of working in addiction, and now doing the work around emotional eating. So definitely give that check that out, and then so that is my review for this week, and the TED Talk is called Emotional Eating: What if weight loss isn't about food? So check that out. For the second segment, everybody, is the lesson from the counselling classroom. In this week's lesson, we're going to discuss CBT and ACT. So CBT and ACT. And CBT is cognitive behaviour therapy, and ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy. So they are both different modalities or different models that therapists use to be able to manage, to be able to help somebody to make changes. So it's for behavioral change. It's for working through things like emotional eating and addiction. So these two sometimes a lot of people are using them together. ACT is very new. It's very exciting. It's everywhere. But adopted with CBT, which is very much about, you have a negative thought, now challenge it. It's about being rational, challenging it, working to eliminate those thoughts. And we know you can't fully eliminate, but to reframe them and to find a more healthy way of thinking about something. To also challenge that, and is it true? And what is your evidence? And that's what a CBT therapist would help you do. And there's a lot of literature out there, and the Beck's Diet Solution it's a huge book, and she's I think it's the daughter of the father of CBT, who just recently actually passed away. So that's a really good resource, and that's something that you could do to support yourself to understand your your negative thought patterns, how to challenge them, how to reframe them, and how to support yourself. But ACT is very much about okay, seeing that negative, negative thought, but almost seeing it as a third person. So your outsider is not you. So if for example, you go past a mirror and you see a reflection of yourself, and you see that, for example, you've got that third role or whatever it may be, and then you know that usually leads to a spiral of negative talking, unhelpful dialogue starts, and then eventually leads to you going back down to just to soothe yourself with whatever you were trying to avoid. But in a helpful way, you could just accept it. That voice is there, yes, and it doesn't, and that role is there. That is true, but I acknowledge it. You can see it, you can look, but that's okay. I still choose to do what I'm doing, still choosing to exercise nevertheless, still choosing to eat the right way, still choosing to make the right choices for myself, and having that goal that I'm, is not going to be deterred by those negative thoughts. So together, on one hand we're challenging, and on the other hand we're accepting. So it's a kind of it's a kinder model. It's that we can use together in conjunction. Is that actually, there we are going to have negative thoughts. We are going to have this dialogue, but if I can step away from it and look, it can't be you, so it can't stop you from that worthwhile goal that you are hoping to achieve. So in summary, it's a very brief explanation of these two modalities, and they're really worth going into depth. There's a lot about CBT on YouTube, on podcasts of CBT therapists explaining how CBT can be used for weight loss and long-term weight loss success. And then there's a lot about now emerging about ACT also. I know the NHS is starting to adopt it, and it's a very, I think it's a very kind way in a society where diet culture has really taught us to be bullies to ourselves. I think this is really this is a move to the right direction in a way that's that's the way that you will talk to a friend. We would acknowledge there's things that we need to work on, but that's okay. We're still working on it. We're acknowledging it. We're okay with the feeling. And if you're okay with that feeling and you sense it and you know what's happening, then you've got more control. So in the long term, you are winning over the old brain. So it allows that new brain to kick in and then be able to navigate, keep on driving. We're not going to let it deter us and take us down a road that we did not intend to go, because then it will take us longer to get to our destination. So, and then next, I may one day figure out how to do this officially, but the third segment is I've named it this week Food for Thought. So on this week's Food for Thought, this is just my own opinion on something that I've seen on social media, on blogs, on the world of bariatric surgery, is what happens when you don't recognize yourself. So what happens after you've dreamt and you've fantasized and you daydreamed about who you will be, what you will look like, and then eventually you get there and the face looking back at you it's somebody you don't recognize. And then what happens about So for example, let me use me as an example. I lost the weight in my family, especially my dad, was really upset about the fact that I looked ill. He thought I looked like somebody that was abusing drugs, because I looked in his eyes so different and gaunt. And I think because he didn't have enough time, or because it didn't happen slowly, it was startling. So a lot of people would make comments, would make comments that I looked better before, or now I look unwell. So that was disappointing, because I always expected everybody to be delighted, and really happy that I've lost weight. But I guess either way, they were not that bothered that I was overweight. They were just used to who I was, and they really didn't think about what I would look like, or they accepted me for who I was, which in my head, I wanted to be skinny and everybody would see me as a success if I was. And I learned that actually nobody's that invested in the way, how much I weigh. However, it was something that I don't know, that was brought to my attention quite a lot. And for me, just getting used to the change so quickly, and my face physically aged. My For example, there's features that I wasn't, for example, I wasn't used to the way my nose looked, or the wrinkles are a lot more pronounced now, but I am a lot older as well. So I think it's important to think about what happens when the person looking back at you is not what you expected. And I think the healthy way to be is to say, I'm going to be neutral about it. I am who I am, and what's important is not, how slim my face looks, or anything like that, but rather that I'm still the same person, but somebody who treats themselves so much better. So also another thing that could be really startling is excess skin. Is I think that can be really difficult as well, because you look like somebody who's slim and who could wear a set, it's like, say, size 10 jeans, but then when you take that jeans off, or you want to put a particular top with it, you can't, because you've got all this excess skin. And then that's another conversation of, do I want to go under the knife? And that's the one it's difficult to come to terms with, because you just think it's never over. Why can't I just, why is it just an ongoing process? So that feels a bit unfair. Also, another thing is, how about, for example, the people on this thread were talking about, what about when you don't reach your goal weight and now you're stuck in the middle? So you're not the person you used to be, and you're not the person that you wanted to be, especially if you gauge your who you are by your weight, or by the scale, which we are used to, because we're so accustomed to if you've lost weight, then you're the star of the week, you've had a good week, everybody claps for you. And if you haven't, then what happened, and you get all those looks of disappointment. And I think that eventually turns into you thinking, if you lose weight, then you're more acceptable to people, you're more palatable to people, which is not the case. But yes, so I think my summary is that lose all expectations. Everything's going to always be different to what you have thought it will be, and that's okay. Things are going to change. You can never really predict the future. So if you've had weight loss surgery, you're going to have weight loss surgery. don't put too much weight. That's a good one. Don't put too much emphasis on the physical attributes that you really want to gain out of it, but more your energy, all the exciting activities you can do, all the places you can go. And I think they are a lot easier to measure and achieve than you expecting to meet society's levels of beauty, because we all fall short of that. So so that's this segment, food for thought. I think I may stick to that next week, but if you've got a better idea, please, I'm open to ideas on gastric mindset on Instagram. Send me a message, and it may be your topic that I cover next. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here. With love and gratitude, I hope I get your company next week. Connect with me on Instagram, like I said, at Gastric Mindset. Share this podcast with your Barry bestie. And a disclaimer, this podcast is not a replacement for therapy. Please go on, if you need therapy, please go and find a credible therapist or a coach or a support group. This podcast is just to provide you with just a tiny bit of information, so the journey is a little bit easier and less lonely. I don't know if less slowly is an actual word, but I'm going to leave it there. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. I appreciate you for being here with me. I hope you got some value from this episode. If so, please give me a review. It will make me super happy and support others from our community to find the podcast. Share it with your Barry bestie. Connect with me on Instagram at Gastric Mindset. It'll be wonderful to hear from you.